Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, Senator Gold has found in his toolbox the tool that Senator Furey left him with, the ability to use the power of the government majority to shut down debate. Don't let the form of Senator Gold's motion fool you. Chapter 7 of our rules talks about a motion to allocate time. But what we are talking about in reality is shutting down debate. Let me quote from a few good old Liberals in the good old days. Let me quote Senator Jim Cowan, who is the leader of the opposition. And this is what Senator Cowan said in December 2012. Some honourable senators opposite, and certainly the government, tried to say this is a process issue, not important to Canadians. And of course, the motion before us sounds dry and technical. Time allocation. Who could be interested in that? Let me tell you who is interested. The senators who wanted to add their voice to this debate and who wanted to improve the bill. The thousands of Indigenous people who were never consulted about this bill. The hundreds of thousands of law-abiding firearm owners who were constantly and are constantly being targeted by this government. The millions of Canadians who feel cheated by this move of the government to shut down debate on a bad bill. As I said, the term used in the rules of the Senate is time allocation. Since I have been here a few years, I try to remember the synonyms that were used over the years by our Liberal colleagues who were then in opposition. And I think it might help the Trudeau-appointed senators who were not here at that time to understand what time allocation really is. I think that using the words of these old Liberal senators, some of them who are still here, could convince the new Liberal senators, disguised as independents, that Senator Gold's motion is bad. What Senator Gold and the Trudeau government want to do has been described as an effort to do time allocation, do time limitation, invoke closure, curtail debate, limit debate to a maximum degree possible, cut off debate, shut down debate in Parliament, ram C-21 through and cut off debate, run shortcuts around due process, avoid careful scrutiny, silence our voices on the most critical issues facing Canadians, and slam through its agenda without listening either to Parliament or to Canadians. What Senator Gold is doing has been called undemocratic, a guillotine imposed by the government on this chamber, using power to secure more power, the muzzling of Parliament and through that of the Canadian people, an abuse of Parliament, and denying Parliament its right, our duty, to seriously examine what is proposed to be the law of the land. With Senator Gold's motion, we have been told Parliament is being emasculated, and our examination of important government legislation has been radically truncated. This is what Liberal senators said about time allocation 10 years ago or so. Let me quote again Senator Cowan when he speaks about the words time allocation. They are words used to stop debate, to kill it outright, to prevent each one of us from asking questions about the very important and complicated bill before us, to stop us from looking too closely at this government's plans for our country. To look closely is, of course, our job. It is what Canadians expect us to do, what we are paid to do, what we are summoned here to do. The use of time allocation by a leader of the government that is neither leader nor a member of the government caucus was a departing gift to the government from our former Speaker, Speaker Furey. And you all know that I have and always have had great respect for a former Speaker. One thing I will, however, remember is the level of creativity and the novelty he could bring in his April 25th decision. There are those who apply rules and those who rewrite rules. The Liberal Party of Canada is the governing party. Senator Gold is not a member of the Liberal Party. He admitted so.
Swears it up and down.
No matter the facts, we are told to imagine that Senator Gold is the leader of a theoretical governing party.
He is when it's convenient.
A party that exists only for the purpose of giving Senator Gold the ability to shut down debate. This ruling was wrong then and is still wrong today. It was purely a political decision. In normal circumstances, it would have been reversed by a new speaker, but we are not in normal circumstances. I understand that some of the new senators may not be familiar with the notion of time allocation or closure. You have to know, colleagues, that this place functioned for 124 years without any form of limitation on debate. It was a debate on the GST and the antics of the Liberal senators who used their right to debate the bill for weeks and weeks that convinced everyone that the government should have a tool to limit what amounts to filibuster. The overuse by Liberals of their privilege to unlimited debate was studied by the Rules Committee, which came up with what now is Chapter 7 of our rules. So the use of time allocation is a reaction to a filibuster by the opposition. Again, let me quote my friend Jim Cowan, this time from March 2012. I miss Jim Cowan. I readily acknowledge that there may be circumstances in which proceeding in this way is justified. For instance, when a deliberate filibuster drags on and on. Debate at third reading on Bill C-21 started 1 week ago, on December 6th, when the sponsor, Senator Youssef, spoke. The day after, Senator Boisvenu spoke. Then on Monday, the next sitting, Senator Carignan spoke. And then I spoke yesterday. That's hardly dragging our feet. Senator Gold then, immediately after I spoke yesterday. I'm the critic on this bill. Normally I would speak last. I offered to speak early. And I had hardly sat down in my seat. And up jumped Senator Gold to give notice of his time allocation motion. 4 senators spoke at third reading. Every sitting since the bill was introduced at third reading, there was a senator who spoke. That is no filibuster, colleagues, not by any stretch of the imagination. I will continue to quote former Liberal senators. Maybe their words will enlighten senators also appointed by a Liberal Prime Minister. This is what Senator Joan Fraser said in July 2010. There are occasions when time allocation, drastic as it may be necessary. It may be necessary on a major piece of legislation when the opposition is being obstructionist for pure obstructionist's sake. I admit our caucus has sometimes filibustered a bad bill or a motion. How can someone seriously accuse us of being obstructionist when we speak on the bill at each sitting? But then we remember that Mark Ariston accused me of holding up the bill before we even had it in the chamber. The Senate never adjourned the debate on third reading of Bill C-21. Not once. Not once. How is this a filibuster? How are we obstructionists? We never hid the fact that we do not like this bill, that we wanted to amend it thoroughly, that if the bill was not amended, we would vote against it. But we were not obstructionists in any way. I submit to you, colleagues, that this use of time allocation has one objective, and one objective only, to shut down the Senate early. It is not used to counter a filibuster. There is no filibuster. That is why the use of time allocation by the government is so outrageous and should be opposed. The other reason usually invoked for imposing the guillotine on debate is the urgency of passing a bill. I am sure that we all agree that debate should be limited when time is of the essence. If a legislature is called upon to pass a bill to stop a strike in a hospital, for instance, where patients are in danger, it is easy to understand that it is fair to put parameters on the duration of the debate. But there is no urgency in the case of C-21. This bill in its current form, or tabled in previous parliaments, has been around for years. And then Public Safety Minister, or Public Safety Disaster, as some like to call him, Marco Mendocino, amended the bill and then rejected his own amendments. The legislative process of this bill will become a classic story of what not to do for future generations of parliamentary assistants. C-21 may be important to the Prime Minister. C-21 may be important for some Canadians. But C-21 is not urgent. If it had been urgent, do you think the government would have left it laying in the House of Commons for a year, doing nothing with it? The essence of Bill C-21 merely confirms orders in council that have already been enacted by the government. That is the case with the ban on the purchase and sale of handguns. And it is the case in relation to the expanded definition of prohibited firearms. Even the so-called red flag provisions in the bill duplicate powers that the police and chief firearms officers already possess. Because this bill is not urgent, the use of time allocation by the government should be opposed. As I said before, Senator Gold gave his notice that he intends to vote time allocation. Only 4 senators had spoken at third reading. This means that 90, yes, colleagues, 90 senators have not yet spoken to this bill. With only 6 hours of debate left, that means that at least 66 senators will be deprived of their right to speak. With this motion, Senator Gold is telling at least 66 of his colleagues that the government has absolutely no interest in listening to what they have to say. As the then Deputy Leader of the Opposition, Senator Claudie Tardif, said in 2012, I find it hard to believe that members of this government, who proudly boast that they defend freedom of expression, would use any means available to them to limit opposition senators' right to speak. I have a question for the Trudeau-appointed senators who are ready to give Senator Gold the hammer to shut down debate on C-21. When the Prime Minister called you to announce your appointment to the Senate of Canada, did he tell you that on the whim of the government leader, you would have to hold your nose and shut down debate after 4 days of debate on a bill? Did he mention that he would gladly use the good old tools of the past to silence the opposition? That he would do, with your help, what he and his Liberal senators were denouncing when the Conservative government was doing it? This is what is asked from you today. Senator Gold is telling us, I don't care what senators have to say. The government wants this bill now, and we have to bow to the Prime Minister's wishes. I have given you several quotes from the ghosts of the Liberal past. Let me now quote a senator who ended his Senate career as a member of the PSG in 2012, Senator Dennis Dawson. Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. I think this is where I left off, that I was just saying I had given you several quotes from ghosts of the Liberal Senate past, and I now wanted to give you a quote from a senator who ended his career here with the PSG in 2012, and that's Senator Dawson. And Senator Dawson said, parliamentarians are supposed to debate the government's proposed legislation. They are not supposed to rubber stamp measures proposed by public servants or the executive. They are supposed to carefully consider the measures, talk about them, amend them, study them, and ensure that taxpayers' concerns have been fully expressed. What Senator Gold is doing here tonight is ramming C-21 through and cutting off debate. And this is an affront to our job as senators. We are not here to govern. We are here to hold to account those who do. But to do that, we need the ability to debate legislation and to propose amendments. Senator Gold's motion would not only restrict our ability to debate, it means none of you can present amendments. I repeat, the government is doing that while 90 senators have not spoken to the bill. 90 senators are stripped of their right to present an amendment. 90 senators no longer have the ability to try to improve this flawed bill. Not only does time allocation take away the right of senators to speak on this bill, it silences the voices of all those whom the government failed to consult. If we vote in favor of this motion and allow it to pass, then we are complicit with the government's clear intent to silence those who need to be heard. Colleagues, as you know, stakeholders cannot walk into this chamber and make their view known. We are to represent them. We are required to protect the voices of Canadians who would otherwise not be heard. And today, that is gun owners. Whether you agree with this bill or not, you should support the right of stakeholders to be heard. But this motion removes that. It silences all those voices before they are even heard. Senator Boisvenu put it well when he said, "I will address one of the most obvious things that's missing from the current version of Bill C-21, something that's at the root of all problems with this bill. This flaw is due to the fact that the government held almost no consultations while drafting this bill." Senator Boisvenu went on to give example after example of the government's failure to consult. The Indigenous people were not consulted. Pond Erngut, Vice President of Nunavut Tungavut Incorporated, said, "We understand that Inuit, Teperit, Kanatami, the National Inuit Organization, commonly known as ITK, had received a briefing of the most recent version of the bill shortly before it was tabled in May. However, neither ITK nor NTI has been fully consulted on the language that impacts this bill." Jessica Lazar, Chief of the Mohawk Council of Kanawaki, said, "We only had one meeting, and that wasn't necessarily an adequate consultation, so I wouldn't consider it consultation whatsoever." The government also failed to consult with sport shooters. Sandra Honor, Chair of the Board of Directors of the Shooting Federation of Canada, said, "The Shooting Federation of Canada was not asked to participate in the committee that discussed Bill C-21. Nor did we have letters answered to us after we wrote the minister several times to request. I have no confidence in the minister." We heard yesterday from Senator Deakin. She all of a sudden renewed her confidence in the minister that he promised her something. He promised us that he had consulted. Gilbert White, chairperson of the Saskatchewan Wildlife Federation Recreational Firearm Community, said the Saskatchewan Wildlife Federation was not consulted. When asked if his organization had been consulted, Doug Chazon, Executive Director of Fur Institute of Canada, said, "No, we were not." Colleagues, the list goes on. The views of Canadians impacted by this legislation were not sought, and when they spoke up to say no, they were shut out. By cutting off debate, we are silencing them once again. Let me quote once again the then leader of the opposition at the time, the member of Justin Trudeau Liberal Caucus, Jim Cowan, in March of 2012. "We know that this bill is contentious. We have all received hundreds of emails and other communications from very concerned Canadians asking us, pleading us to reflect carefully on the proposals in this bill. How insulting to these people to then invoke closure, to shut down debate, to limit it to the maximum degree possible, and to do so immediately." Colleagues, you have no idea of how many emails we have received asking us to do exactly the same thing. This applies perfectly here with Bill C-21. In 2016, we heard over and over how Trudeau senators are independent. And yet their voting record, 96% of the time with the government, but they are independent. They sponsor government legislation, but they are independent. The vote on this motion will be another test of this independence. We have to remember, colleagues, that debate is not simply trying to convince one another to vote a certain way. Debate is part of a process of ensuring that before we make a final decision on a bill, that we have fully considered the issue, that we have taken the time to listen and consider all voices on the issue, not just those that agree with us. The government has not done that, and now through this motion, the government wants to prevent us from doing that. That is unfortunate. The Senate of Canada serves an integral component of the nation's legislative process, with one of its key roles being the representative of marginalized, underrepresented voices. This function is crucial in ensuring a comprehensive and inclusive approach to governance. The Senate acts as a platform where interests and concerns of minority groups, individuals in remote or less populated regions, and those whose voices are often overlooked in the political arena are brought to the forefront. The importance of this role cannot be overstated. In a diverse country like Canada, there are a myriad of perspectives and issues that may not always find adequate representation in the more politically driven House of Commons. The Senate's mandate to listen and give voice to these less heard segments of the population is a cornerstone of its existence. The process of consultation is vital in this context. The Senate's effectiveness in representing these groups hinges on its ability to actively engage with them, understand their concerns, and reflect these in the legislative process. Through consultations, the Senate gathers insights and viewpoints that are essential in crafting laws and policies that are equitable and inclusive. Believe it or not, colleagues, this role of the Senate of Canada becomes particularly significant in the context of debates like gun control, where diverse viewpoints need to be heard and considered. Gun control is a contentious issue in Canada, encompassing a wide range of perspectives from public safety concerns to the rights of gun owners. While the primary focus often lies on enhancing public safety and reducing gun violence, it is essential to recognize that lawful gun owners also represent a significant segment of the Canadian populace. These individuals include hunters, sport shooters, and rural residents for whom firearms are part of their lifestyle and culture. Whether you agree with them or not, the Senate's role in representing gun owners is vital by ensuring that their voices and concerns are heard in the legislative process. The Senate contributes to a more balanced and comprehensive discussion. This motion to cut off debate strikes to the core of the Senate's role to represent the voices of the unheard. This is regrettable, colleagues. We should not approve this. And let me just reflect for a few moments. I think I have a few moments left. You know, the fact that we got this bill as late as we did is not our fault. It's the government's fault. They didn't give us the opportunity. We are going to receive a few more bills this week. We don't know when because the government leader doesn't know when. Today in the other place, we are waiting for a bill right in this chamber, the Ukraine-Canada Free Trade Agreement, that we don't have. Our government leader says we have to pass that before we go home for Christmas. We don't have the bill. Today, when the government had the opportunity to present that bill, what did they do? They called C-58, the scab workers legislation, to send it to committee, to sit at committee till February when they come back and do nothing, instead of bringing C-57, the Ukraine-Canada Free Trade Agreement, to the forefront so we could have it. What's going to happen at the end of the week when we receive that bill and we want to do proper debate and we want to send it to committee? We're going to have the government leader say, no, we're out of here next week, Wednesday, and I'm going to do time allocation. He's going to come in here. I spoke to the leader of the opposition, and I told him I was doing time allocation. Not I consulted, I told him I was going to do time allocation. These people over in the other place, this government can't organize a two-car parade over there, and then they send this to us on their way out the door, which is what's going to happen, colleagues. They're going for Christmas on Friday. Trust me. And they're going to send it on the way out the door. Senate, deal with it. Government leader is going to say, we're not going home until we deal with it. Can you give me leave? I have a feeling my friends over in the far corner, where they're hard to recognize some days, are going to say, no, we're not giving leave. So there we are. I would give leave, I know that, but they won't. So there we are. We're going to have to be here. And then we're going to have time allocation. And we're going to cut off debate. And Canadians won't have the right. Colleagues, we heard earlier today when this bill came to us, and let me just refresh your memory on when we got this bill. On June 21st, received the bill on May 18th. Senator Youssef spoke May 31st. I spoke June 21st, 3 weeks later. There was, I think, 8 speakers in between. First committee meeting on October 4th. Of course, June 21st, we went home for summer break. October 4th, we came back. Consideration of a draft agenda. We went through the committee meetings as per agreed with the entire committee. We weren't holding anything up. Yeah, we presented amendments, but we had all the committee meetings. We decided December 4th, I think was the date that we agreed. The 5th is when it was brought into the chamber for the report. Senator Youssef spoke the 6th. And here we are, the 15th. I spoke yesterday, and like I say, I wasn't in my seat when Senator Gold jumped up, and I'm now doing time allocation. Cutting off every opportunity. I am beside myself with trying to work with this government to try to pass legislation, or move legislation forward, not pass legislation, but move legislation forward, that the people in the other place cannot organize. They can't get us legislation. This bill languished in the other place for a year, colleagues, for a year. This is not a money bill. Nobody's going to go hungry at Christmas time if this bill isn't passed. We all know that in due course, the government members, 60-some or 70-some government members here in this chamber, are going to pass this bill. We understand that, and we accept 55. We accept that. But why the hurry? What's going to happen if we come back February 5th and we continue another couple of weeks of debate on this bill? The government can do everything through regulation. They're already doing it. They can continue to do all of it through regulation, but no, we're being forced. We're being told, cut off debate. And then the leader says, we have done thorough debate. How is that thorough debate? I think there are four speakers tonight on at least so far, that would like to speak to the main bill when we have our 6 hours later on sometime, and maybe more. But they have to do it tonight because debate has been cut off. So now they have to get their comments on record. It's just unfair, and this has happened before. As Senator Gold said, this is the second time in this particular government's history here that they have done time allocation. The last one was done with no consultation with the opposition, none. And the Speaker devised a way of calling Senator Gold the leader of the government. He refuses to accept that styling. He says, I am not the leader of the government. And yet he has to be in order to do what he did tonight, Madam Speaker, in order to do what Senator Gold is doing tonight. I challenge you, Madam Speaker, to ask this leader to at least admit that he is the leader of the government. He is the leader of a registered party. He is the leader of the Liberal government of Canada. If he wants to do this, if he does that, if he stands in this chamber, Madam Speaker, and says, I am the leader of the Liberal government, and I invoke closure, I will vote for it.
To be or not to be.
I will vote for it.
Hear, hear.
But he won't do that. He won't do that. Why? He's embarrassed. I would be embarrassed too. I wouldn't want to call myself the leader of that government either.
That's true.
I wouldn't want to do that. I'm proud to be the leader of the Conservative caucus. Proud.
Senator Gold, that's true.
Madam Speaker, I am going to ask at the end that we certainly vote against this. I would like to ask you to rule against it, but I suppose I could have started my speech in a different manner if I wanted to do that. But I do challenge you, and I challenge everybody in this place, to ask the honourable senator to call himself what he needs to be in order to move this. Thank you very much.